Welcome to the 2020 New Testament Challenge. It's Monday, and today we're in John chapter 16. Yesterday on Sunday, I shared the entirety of chapter 16 in my Sunday message. Today, I'd like to share just the last verse with you, again, to be a great encouragement to you. It's 16:33. Jesus said, "I told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Jesus was saying that in this world, we're going to have great trouble, great pressure, persecution. We're going to have earth shaking trouble. But in the midst of trouble, he said, in me, you can have peace. Where's that peace going to come from? It's in knowing that God loves us and that he is with us and he will see us through great difficulty and trouble. H.B. London 10 years ago wrote in a book called They Call Me Pastor, a story about Dave and Jan. They had just lost their first child with SIDS. They were in the hospital, he was visiting them, and he was struggling. What in the world do I say to this young couple that just came to know the Lord? All of his experience and training seemed to fail him. All he could do was just pray, Lord, tell me what to say to this young couple. I'd like to share with you what he wrote. In a very slow and broken way, he said, Dave and Jan, I don't know why this awful loss has come to you, but I know that God loves you as if you were the only ones in the world to love. If you accept his love, I believe if you believe that he does love you, you will make it. If you don't, you won't. For HB, those words seemed to just fall on the floor. And they were just quiet for quite a while there in the room. And then it seemed as though the holy presence of God entered that room. Just like when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in that fiery furnace, God met them there in the midst of that fiery trial, and his presence was felt. HB said that the whole room seemed to be transformed because of God's presence. Later, when he joined Focus on the Family, he received a letter from Dave and Jan. Let me share what they said to him. HB, you probably don't think that we heard you when you encouraged us to cling to the love of God when our child had died. But we heard you clearly. So we have believed over and over that God loves us as if we were the only ones in the world to love. We have learned to live in the love of God. We quote your words to each other often. The Lord is gracious. We don't understand why we lost our first child. We still hurt when we think about it, but we don't question God anymore. HB continued to write that when he thought about that situation, and many different other situations. Some tough situations are mysteries. We don't have the answers for them. Many of these kind of mysteries, they're greater than our answers, but they stretch our faith and they force us to turn to God because we can't find answers anywhere else. Knowing that God loves us and that he will never leave us will give us that peace that only he can provide in the midst of great trouble. But then Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. In the midst of this pandemic, there's not a lot to watch on television. There's no sports. And so what do we sometimes end up doing as guys? We watch reruns of different events that we've seen before, like last year's Super Bowl. But you know what? When we're watching those kind of programs, there's no anxiety as we're watching that game. There's no yelling at the screen. There's no sweaty palms, no holding your breath when you're about to see what's going to happen next because we know how the whole game ended. We know who won. So when there's a bad call, when there's a fumble, when there is a dropped pass, it's okay because we know who won in the end. And Jesus is saying the exact same thing. When trouble is overwhelming us, we can take heart knowing that he has overcome the world. We know how this is all going to end. We will be with the Lord one day forever. And in the midst of all that's happening right now, God's on the throne. He's already won. And so we can have a calmness and a peace knowing that everything is going to work out for his glory in the end. In this world, we will have trouble. But take heart, Jesus said, I have overcome the world. Thank you for joining the 2020 New Testament Challenge.